The woman's body hit the weathered porch planks with a thud that echoed through the hot Texas afternoon. And Yancey Thornton nearly dropped the bucket of water he just pulled from the well. He'd been ranching alone on the outskirts of Dalhart for 3 years now, and in all that time, he'd never had an unexpected visitor, let alone one who collapsed unconscious on his doorstep. The sun beat down mercilessly as he rushed toward her, his boots heavy against the worn wood. She lay in a crumpled heap, her faded calico dress dusty and torn, her dark hair matted with sweat and dirt. Even from a distance he could see she was breathing, but barely. Yancey knelt beside her, his weathered hands hovering uncertainly before he pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Her pulse fluttered weakly beneath her sun-scorched skin. She was young, maybe 22 or 23, and clearly hadn't had water or rest in days. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, her face gaunt with exhaustion and hunger. Without hesitation, he gathered her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, all bone and desperation. He shouldered open his front door and carried her inside, grateful for the relative coolness of his modest ranch house. The single room was simple but clean, with a bed in one corner, a small kitchen area with a cast iron stove, and a table with 2 chairs he'd made himself from pine. He laid her gently on his bed, the only bed, and immediately set about trying to revive her. He dampened a cloth with water from the bucket and pressed it to her forehead, her cheeks, her throat. She didn't stir. Her breathing remained shallow and rapid. "Come on now," he murmured, dripping a few drops of water onto her cracked lips. "You made it this far, do not quit on me now." Yancey Thornton was 26 years old and had learned to survive alone after his parents died in a fever outbreak that swept through this part of Texas back in 1871. It was now the summer of 1874, and he'd grown accustomed to solitude, to the company of his horses and cattle, to the endless sky and the brutal honesty of the land. But something about this woman, collapsed and helpless, stirred something in him he thought he'd buried with his family. He worked methodically, carefully removing her worn boots to reveal blistered, bleeding feet. Someone had been running or walking for a very long time. He cleaned the wounds gently, his large hands surprisingly tender as he wrapped them in clean strips of cloth. He loosened the collar of her dress to help her breathe easier, keeping his eyes respectfully averted from anything improper. As the afternoon wore into evening, she finally began to show signs of waking. Her eyelids fluttered, and a small moan escaped her lips. Yancey was immediately at her side with a cup of water. "Easy now," he said softly. "You are safe. Just take it slow." Her eyes opened, and he found himself staring into the most striking green eyes he'd ever seen. They were filled with confusion and fear, darting around the unfamiliar room before landing on his face. "Where?" Her voice was barely a whisper, raw and painful sounding. "You are at my ranch about 5 miles outside of Dalhart, Texas. I am Yancey Thornton. You collapsed on my porch about 3 hours ago." She tried to sit up, panic flashing across her features, but he gently pressed her shoulder back down. "You need to rest. You are in no condition to go anywhere." "I have to." She started, but her voice gave out. He lifted her head carefully and brought the cup to her lips. "Drink first, then we will talk." She drank greedily, and he had to pull the cup away. "Not too fast. You will make yourself sick." Tears began to stream down her dirty face, and she turned away from him. "I cannot stay here." "It is not safe." "Not safe for who? You or me?" She looked back at him, something haunted in those green eyes. "Both, maybe." Yancey settled into the chair beside the bed, his expression firm but kind. "Well, I am not letting you leave until you are strong enough to walk without falling over. So you might as well tell me what you are running from." She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether she could trust him. He was a large man, tall and broad-shouldered from years of ranch work, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and deep brown eyes that had seen their share of hardship. His face was tanned and weathered, but there was a gentleness to it that seemed to put her slightly at ease. "My name is Lily Weston," she finally said. "I have been walking for 6 days, maybe 7, I lost count. Walking from where?" "Fort Worth." Her voice cracked. "My husband died 3 months ago. Fever. We had debts I did not know about. The men he owed money to, they said I had to work it off at one of their establishments." She said the word with such disgust that Yancey understood immediately what kind of establishment she meant. "I refused. They said I did not have a choice. So I ran." Anger flared in Yancey's chest. Fort Worth was over 200 miles southeast of Dalhart. She'd walked 200 miles through the Texas summer heat, alone and unprotected. "How old are you?" 23. Old enough to know what they wanted from me, and old enough to choose death over that kind of life. "And young enough to still have a life worth living," Yancey said firmly. "You made the right choice running, and you can stay here as long as you need to recover. I have no money to pay you. Did I ask for any?" He stood and moved to the stove, where he'd been simmering a pot of stew. "When did you last eat?" "I do not remember. I had a bit of bread 4 days ago, I think. A woman in a small settlement gave it to me." He ladled some of the stew into a bowl, making sure to get mostly broth and soft vegetables. "Start with this. Your stomach probably cannot handle much more right now." As he helped her sit up enough to eat, propping her against his pillows, Lily felt tears threatening again. She'd been shown more kindness in 3 hours from this stranger than she'd received in the 3 years of her marriage to Marcus Weston. Marcus had been charming when they courted, but after the wedding, she'd discovered his true nature. A gambler, a drunk, and a man who thought nothing of raising his hand to his wife. She'd felt guilty for the relief she experienced when fever took him. And then the guilt had turned to terror when his creditors came calling, led by a snake of a man named Silas Croft, who ran half the brothels and gambling halls in Fort Worth. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked between careful spoonfuls of stew. "You do not know me. I could be lying." Yancey settled back into his chair, his long legs stretched out in front of him. "Could be. But those feet of yours tell a story of their own, and I do not think anyone tears themselves up like that for anything less than pure desperation. Besides, my mama raised me to help people when they need it. She would come back and haunt me fierce if I turned away a woman in trouble." Despite everything, Lily felt a small smile tug at her lips. "She sounds like she was a good woman." "The best," Yancey said, his voice soft with old grief. "Her and my pa both. Fever took them in the winter of '71. Sometimes I think I should have left this place, started fresh somewhere new. But this was their dream, building a life out here. Feels wrong to just abandon it." "I understand that," Lily said. "Holding on to things because of what they meant, even when they hurt." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding born of shared loss and hardship. Over the next few days, Lily slowly regained her strength. Yancey proved to be an attentive caretaker, bringing her meals, changing the bandages on her feet, and never once making her feel like a burden. He'd given her his bed and taken to sleeping on a bedroll on the floor, despite her protests. "You need proper rest to heal," he'd said simply. "I have slept on worse than a clean floor." As she grew stronger, she began to insist on helping around the house. At first it was small things, mending a torn shirt of his, washing the dishes after meals. Yancey protested, but she was stubborn. "I cannot just lie here like an invalid when I am perfectly capable of sitting at a table and doing handwork," she argued on the 4th day. "You have been more than generous, but I need to feel useful." He'd relented, and she'd spent the afternoon repairing several of his shirts and a pair of pants that had been sitting in a basket for months. Her stitches were small and neat, practiced. As she worked, Yancey tended to his animals and did the endless work that came with running a ranch alone. When he came in for supper that evening, dusty and tired, he stopped short at the sight of the clean kitchen, the smell of fresh bread, and Lily standing at the stove stirring something that smelled like heaven. "You should not be on your feet that long yet," he said, though his tone was more concerned than angry. "My feet are healing fine," she countered. "And you cannot tell me you have not been wanting a proper meal instead of that stew you have been living on for a week. The stew is fine. The stew is survival food. This is actual cooking." She turned to face him, and for the first time since she'd arrived, there was color in her cheeks and a spark of life in her eyes. "Let me do this, Yancey, please. I need to feel like less of a charity case." He wanted to argue that she'd never been a charity case, that helping her had been the easiest decision he'd ever made. But he also understood pride, understood the need to contribute. So he just nodded and went to wash up at the basin. Dinner was the best meal he'd had in years. Somehow, she'd taken his meager supplies and created fluffy biscuits, a rich gravy with chunks of salt pork, and stewed greens seasoned just right. They ate in comfortable silence for a while before Lily spoke. "Tell me about your ranch. How many head of cattle do you run?" "About 200 at last count. It is not much, but it is enough for one man to handle. I have 4 horses, some chickens, and a milk cow. I sell beef once a year to the buyers who come through and eggs and milk to folks in town when I make the trip in." "You go to town often?" "Once a month or so for supplies." He studied her across the table. "Are you worried about people knowing you are here?" Lily bit her lip. "I do not want to bring trouble to your door if those men from Fort Worth somehow tracked me if anyone saw me." "Dalhart is not exactly a bustling metropolis," Yancey said dryly. "We have maybe 300 people on a good day. News travels, but it travels slow. And Fort Worth is a long way away. I doubt anyone would think to look for you here." "I hope you are right." "Even if they did, they would have to go through me to get to you." He said it simply, as a statement of fact, but there was steel underneath the words. Lily felt something warm unfold in her chest. "Why would you do that? Risk yourself for a stranger?" Yancey set down his fork and looked at her directly. "You stopped being a stranger when you trusted me enough to tell me your story. Far as I am concerned, you are under my protection now. Anyone who wants to hurt you will have to answer to me first." She had to look away from the intensity in his eyes, her heart beating faster. "I should leave soon. I have already imposed too much." "Where would you go?" "I do not know. Somewhere, anywhere far from Texas." "With what money, what supplies?" Yancey leaned forward. "Lily, you barely survived getting here. You think you can just walk off into the sunset and things will work out. I cannot stay here forever." "Why not?" The question hung in the air between them. Lily opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. "Why not?" "Because it was improper for an unmarried woman to live with an unmarried man. Because people would talk. Because she was terrified of the feelings already starting to grow in her heart for this kind, steady man who'd saved her life without expecting anything in return." "It would not be right," she finally said weakly. "According to who?" Yancey stood and began clearing the dishes. "Look, I am not suggesting anything improper. You can stay as long as you need, no strings attached. I have plenty of work around here, and if you want to help out, I would appreciate it. But there is no pressure. You need time to heal and figure out what you want to do next. This is a safe place to do that." Lily watched him as he moved around the kitchen, this man who'd become her unexpected savior. He was right, of course. She had no money, no supplies, and nowhere to go. The practical choice was to stay, at least for a while longer. But the other part of her, the part that had learned through painful experience not to trust, especially not to trust men, whispered warnings. Yet Yancey had done nothing to earn her mistrust. In the days she'd been here, he'd been nothing but respectful and kind. He'd never leered at her, never made inappropriate comments or advances. He'd given up his bed without complaint and slept on the hard floor to ensure her comfort. "All right," she said softly. "I will stay a while longer, but I insist on earning my keep. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, tend the garden if you have one. I can even help with some of the lighter ranch work. I do have a garden that is more weeds than vegetables at this point," Yancey admitted with a slight smile. "My mother used to tend it, but I have never had the knack for growing things." "Then that will be my first project," Lily declared. "A proper garden. It is too late in the season for some things, but we can still get a fall crop of greens and root vegetables." As the weeks passed, they fell into a comfortable routine. Lily took over the cooking and household chores, threw herself into rescuing the overgrown garden, and even convinced Yancey to let her help feed the chickens and collect eggs. Her feet healed, the haunted look gradually faded from her eyes, and she began to put on weight, her face filling out and the sharpness of hunger leaving her features. Yancey found himself looking forward to the end of each day, when he could come inside to a clean house, a good meal, and Lily's company. They talked about everything and nothing. Her childhood in Mississippi before her family moved to Texas, his memories of building this ranch with his parents, books they'd read, dreams they'd had. He learned that she was smart and funny, that she had strong opinions about politics and religion, that she could argue a point without getting mean about it. She learned that beneath his quiet exterior was a man of deep feeling and fierce loyalty, someone who thought carefully before speaking but meant every word. He had a dry sense of humor that often caught her by surprise, and a patience that seemed endless. One evening in early September, about 6 weeks after Lily's arrival, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in shades of orange and pink. The heat of the day was finally breaking, and a cool breeze carried the scent of the prairie grass. "I have been thinking," Lily said, breaking the comfortable silence. "I should start going to town with you when you make your supply runs." Yancey glanced at her, surprised. "You sure you are ready for that? People will ask questions. Let them ask. We can tell them the truth, that I am helping you around the ranch in exchange for room and board. There is nothing shameful about that." "There is not," Yancey agreed slowly, "but people will gossip, might make things uncomfortable for you. People always gossip. I would rather face it head on than hide out here like I have something to be ashamed of." She turned to look at him. "Unless you would rather I stayed out of sight." "No," he said quickly, perhaps too quickly. "I just do not want to make things harder for you." "You have made everything easier," Lily said softly. "I was half dead when I got here, Yancey. You saved my life. The least I can do is hold my head up and not act like being here is something scandalous." So the following week, when Yancey hitched up the wagon for his monthly trip to Dalhart, Lily climbed up beside him wearing her cleanest dress, her hair neatly braided and pinned. She'd mended the dress as best she could, but it was still obviously worn and faded. She tried not to feel self-conscious about it. The ride into town took about an hour. Dalhart was small, as Yancey had said, just a collection of buildings clustered along the railroad tracks that had been laid through a few years earlier. There was a general store, a saloon, a church, a small hotel, a blacksmith, and a scattering of houses. As they pulled up to the general store, Lily noticed several people turning to stare. She lifted her chin and ignored them, climbing down from the wagon with as much dignity as she could muster. The general store was run by a middle-aged woman named Martha Hayes, who had sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She looked Lily up and down as they entered. "Yancey Thornton, I have not seen you in 2 months. I was beginning to think you had died out there on that ranch of yours." Her gaze shifted to Lily. "And who might this be?" "Mrs. Hayes, this is Lily Weston. She is helping me out at the ranch." "Lily, this is Martha Hayes. She runs the best store in Dalhart." "The only store in Dalhart," Martha corrected, but there was a hint of pleasure at the compliment. "Helping out, is it? Where did you come from, girl?" Lily met her gaze steadily. "Fort Worth, madam. I am a widow. I needed a fresh start, and Mr. Thornton was kind enough to offer me work." It was not exactly the whole truth, but it was not a lie either. Martha's eyes narrowed, clearly wanting to ask more questions, but something in Lily's expression must have warned her off. Well, the Lord knows Yancey could use someone to keep that place from falling down around his ears. That man cannot cook to save his life. She turned to Yancey. "What do you need today?" As Yancey rattled off his list, Lily wandered the store looking at the goods on display. Everything was expensive, she knew, marked up because of the cost of shipping things this far out. There was a bolt of blue calico that caught her eye, a pretty sky blue that would make a nice dress, but she quickly looked away. She had no money for such things. "You like that fabric?" Lily turned to find Yancey beside her. "It is pretty, but I was just looking." "Your dress is about worn through," he said bluntly. "You need a new one, and probably some other things too. We should get you some fabric, thread, buttons, whatever you need." "Yancey, no, I cannot let you do that. You have been cooking and cleaning and working that garden for 6 weeks now. You have earned it. Consider it payment for services rendered. But I do not need payment. You are already giving me a place to stay, Lily." He waited until she looked at him. "You need a decent dress. Let me do this, please." There was something in his eyes, a warmth that made her pulse quicken. She realized this was important to him, that he wanted to provide for her, to take care of her. Part of her wanted to refuse on principle, to maintain her independence. But another part, a part that had been cold and scared for so long, wanted desperately to accept this gesture of care. "All right," she said finally. "Thank you." They left the store with not just the blue calico, but also fabric for 2 more dresses, a warm shawl for winter, new stockings, a pair of boots that actually fit properly, and sundry other necessities. Martha Hayes had watched the whole transaction with undisguised curiosity, and Lily knew that by evening, half the town would know that Yancey Thornton had a woman living with him, and that he was buying her things. As they loaded the supplies into the wagon, a man approached them. He was tall and thin, dressed in a black suit despite the heat with a minister's collar. "Yancey Thornton," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Good to see you in town. It has been a while." "Reverend Matthews," Yancey shook his hand. "Good to see you too. This is Lily Weston." "She is staying at my ranch, Mrs. Weston," the Reverend nodded politely. "Welcome to Dalhart. I hope we will see you at services on Sunday." "Oh, I do not know," Lily started, but Yancey cut in. "Actually, Reverend, I have been meaning to talk to you about something. Do you have a few minutes?" "Of course. Shall we step into my office?" Lily stayed with the wagon while the 2 men walked to the small building next to the church. She wondered what Yancey needed to discuss with a minister, but she did not have long to speculate. They returned within 10 minutes, and the Reverend was smiling. "Mrs. Weston, Yancey has asked me to speak with you about a matter of some importance. Would you mind coming inside for a moment?" Confused but curious, Lily followed them into the Reverend's simple office. Yancey looked nervous, his hat in his hands, turning it around and around by the brim. "Lily," he started, then stopped. "I have been thinking about this for a while now, and I talked to the Reverend here about the best way to go about it. The thing is, you living at my ranch, it is fine by me, but I know people are going to talk, and I do not want that talk to hurt you or your reputation. I told you I do not care what people say, Lily said, though her heart was starting to beat faster. I know, but I do. I care about you, Lily. These past 6 weeks, having you there, they have been the best weeks I have had since my parents died. I do not want you to leave, not ever. And I think if you are being honest, maybe you do not want to leave either. Lily swallowed hard. I do not, but Yancey, what are you saying? I am saying we should get married. He said it in a rush, his cheeks reddening. I know it is fast, and I know you just got out of a bad marriage, so maybe the idea is not appealing. But this would not be like that. I would not ever hurt you, Lily. I would take care of you, treat you right. You would have a home, a name, protection. And I would have, well, I would have you. Lily felt tears pricking at her eyes. Yancey, you do not have to marry me out of obligation. I can leave, find work somewhere else. You have already done so much. This is not about obligation, he said firmly, stepping closer to her. Maybe it started that way, me just wanting to help someone in trouble. But somewhere along the way it became more than that. I care about you, Lily. Maybe it is too soon to call it love, but it feels like it is heading that direction fast. And I think, maybe, you might feel something similar. She did. She had been trying not to admit it to herself, but she had fallen for Yancey Thornton. Fallen for his kindness, his quiet strength, his gentle humor. Fallen for the way he looked at her like she mattered, like she was precious. It was so different from Marcus, who had looked at her like property, like a burden. I do feel something, she admitted quietly. But marriage, Yancey, it is such a big step. What if you regret it? What if I turn out to be not what you hoped? Life does not come with guarantees, Yancey said. But I would rather take a chance on something that feels right than spend the rest of my life wondering what if. I am not asking you to decide right this second. Think about it. Take all the time you need. But know that I am serious about this. Dead serious. Reverend Matthews, who had been quietly observing this exchange, spoke up. Mrs. Weston, I have known Yancey since he was a boy. He is a good man, honest and true. If he says he will treat you right, he will. But he is also correct that you should not feel pressured. This is a decision that needs to be made with a clear head and an honest heart. Lily looked between the two men, then settled her gaze on Yancey. Really looked at him, at this man who had saved her without hesitation, who had cared for her when she was broken, who had asked for nothing in return, who was now offering her everything, his name, his home, his protection, and if she was reading him right, his heart. I do not need time to think about it, she said softly. I know my answer. Yancey's eyes widened with hope and fear. You do? Yes. She took a deep breath. Yes, I will marry you, Yancey Thornton. The smile that broke across his face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He grabbed her hands, squeezing them gently. You mean it. You are sure. I am sure. You are right. This feels right. Rushing would be marrying you tomorrow. But if we are both certain about what we want, then why wait and let people gossip? Reverend Matthews chuckled. I appreciate decisive people. How soon were you thinking? Lily and Yancey looked at each other. 2 weeks, Yancey suggested. That would give Lily time to make a proper dress, and we could get word out to anyone who might want to attend. 2 weeks it is, the Reverend agreed. I will need to meet with you both a few times before then, to discuss the seriousness of the commitment and to ensure you are both entering into this with the right intentions. But assuming all goes well, we can have the ceremony 2 weeks from this coming Sunday. As they rode back to the ranch that afternoon, Lily felt as if she were in a dream. She was engaged. Again. But this time it felt completely different. This time there was no pressure from family, no charming lies, no hidden darkness. Just two people who had found each other in unlikely circumstances and decided to build a life together. "Are you all right?" Yancey asked as they bumped along the rutted road. "You have been quiet." "I am just thinking. This morning I woke up as your employee. Tonight I will go to sleep as your fiancé. Life can change quickly, can it not? Do you regret saying yes?" "No," she said firmly. "I do not." "Do you regret asking?" "Not for a second." He reached over and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. It was the first time he'd touched her beyond the necessary contact of helping her when she was injured. His hand was large and calloused, warm and strong. "I know this is not the most romantic proposal. No flowers or poetry or going down on one knee." "I have had romantic words before," Lily said quietly. "They turned out to be empty. I will take honest intentions over pretty speeches any day." They rode in silence for a while, hands clasped, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. Finally, Yancey spoke again. "I want you to know, I do not expect anything from you right away. After we marry, I mean. I know your first marriage was not happy, and I do not want you to feel pressured into anything you are not ready for. We can take things as slow as you need." Lily felt a rush of affection for this man who thought of her comfort even now. "Thank you for saying that. But Yancey, I am choosing this. Choosing you. I am not going into this with reservations. When I marry you, I want it to be a real marriage in every way. You do not have to treat me like I am fragile." "You are not fragile," Yancey agreed. "You are one of the strongest people I have ever met. Walking 200 miles to escape a life you did not want. That takes courage most people do not have. But strong people can still carry wounds. I just want you to know I am patient. Whatever you need, however long it takes, I am not going anywhere." By the time they reached the ranch, Lily knew without a doubt she had made the right decision. This was a man she could trust, could build a life with, could maybe even love with her whole heart without fear. The next 2 weeks passed in a flurry of activity. Lily worked on sewing her wedding dress from the blue calico, staying up late by lamplight to ensure every stitch was perfect. Yancey made several improvements to the ranch house, fixing the roof where it leaked, building a proper wardrobe for Lily's clothes, even constructing a privacy screen so she could have a section of the room to herself for dressing and such. They met with Reverend Matthews 3 times, discussing their expectations for marriage, their faith, their hopes for the future. Each conversation seemed to bring them closer, revealing more about each other's hearts and minds. Word spread quickly through Dalhart about the upcoming wedding. Some people were skeptical, gossiping about how fast it was happening, speculating about Lily's past and whether Yancey was being foolish. But others were genuinely happy for him, glad to see the lonely rancher finding companionship. Martha Hayes, surprisingly, became an ally. She showed up at the ranch one afternoon with a group of women from town. "We are here to help with wedding preparations," she announced. "Every bride needs support, and since you do not have family here, we will stand in." Lily was touched nearly to tears as these women, most of whom she'd never met, spent the afternoon helping her finish her dress, giving her advice and sharing in her excitement. They brought food for the wedding celebration, offered to decorate the church, and welcomed her into their community. On the morning of the wedding, Lily woke early in the pre-dawn darkness. She lay in Yancey's bed for what would be the last time as an unmarried woman, listening to his quiet breathing from his bedroll on the floor. In a few hours, they would be husband and wife, and everything would change. She was not scared. She was ready. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. The little church was packed with people, far more than Lily had expected. Apparently, everyone in Dalhart and the surrounding ranches had turned out for the event. She walked down the aisle alone, her head held high, wearing her blue dress and carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers that Yancey had picked for her that morning. When she reached the front of the church and saw Yancey waiting for her in his Sunday best, his eyes full of warmth and promise, her heart swelled with emotion. This was right. This was home. They exchanged vows in clear, steady voices. When Reverend Matthews pronounced them man and wife and told Yancey he could kiss his bride, he cupped her face gently in his hands and kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. It was her first real kiss, she realized. Marcus had taken kisses, but this was different. This was given and received freely, a promise and a beginning. The celebration afterward was joyful. The women had prepared a feast, and there was music and dancing. Lily found herself swept up in the warmth of the community. These people who had welcomed her despite not knowing her story, who had chosen to accept her because Yancey vouched for her. As the sun began to set, they finally made their escape, riding back to the ranch in the wagon, Lily's head resting on Yancey's shoulder. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought I could be," she answered honestly. That night, in the privacy of their home, now truly theirs together, they began their married life. Yancey was patient and gentle, asking what she wanted, checking that she was comfortable. It was nothing like her experiences with Marcus. This was connection, intimacy. Two people choosing to be vulnerable with each other. It was everything she had hoped for and more. In the months that followed, Lily bloomed like her garden. The haunted look disappeared completely from her eyes, replaced by contentment and joy. She threw herself into making the ranch house a real home, sewing curtains for the windows, planting flowers around the porch, filling the space with warmth and life. Yancey had never been happier. He would come in from a long day of work to find his wife humming as she cooked, or tending her garden, or mending clothes, and his heart would swell with gratitude for the twist of fate that had brought her to his door. They worked well together, anticipating each other's needs, falling into a rhythm that felt natural and right. Yancey taught Lily how to ride properly, and sometimes she would ride out to bring him lunch while he was working with the cattle. Those moments, sitting together in the shade of his horse, sharing a meal and talking about everything and nothing, became some of his favorite times. Winter came, and with it, the isolation of ranch life, but neither of them minded. They spent long evenings by the fire, Lily reading aloud while Yancey worked on repairing tack or carving small projects from wood. They talked about their dreams, their plans for expanding the ranch, their hopes for the future. "I would like to have children someday," Lily said one night in January, her head resting on Yancey's chest as they lay in bed. "Is that something you want?" "I do," Yancey said, his hand stroking her hair. "I always thought I would die alone out here, never have a family. But now, the idea of little ones running around, helping with the chores, learning to ride, it sounds perfect." "How many would you want?" "As many as the Lord sees fit to bless us with." "What about you?" "At least 2 or 3. I hated being an only child. I always wanted brothers and sisters." "Then we will work on filling this house with children," Yancey said, kissing the top of her head. By spring, Lily suspected she might be pregnant. She waited to say anything until she was sure, not wanting to get Yancey's hopes up prematurely. But by March, there was no doubt. She told him one morning over breakfast, just stated it plainly. "I am going to have a baby." Yancey dropped his fork, staring at her. "You are sure?" "I am sure. Probably due in late September or early October." He was around the table in an instant, pulling her into his arms, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to be parents. Lily, we are going to have a baby." "We are," she laughed, holding him tight. "Are you happy?" Happy does not even begin to cover it. The pregnancy was relatively easy. though the summer heat made the last months uncomfortable. Yancey was endlessly solicitous, trying to take over all her chores, insisting she rest. She humored him to a point but refused to be treated like an invalid. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time," she reminded him when he protested her weeding the garden in her 7th month. "I am not going to break. I know, but humor me. I have never done this before, and I am terrified of something going wrong." She softened at the genuine fear in his eyes. "Nothing is going to go wrong. We are both healthy, and when the time comes, Martha Hayes has agreed to attend me. She has helped birth half the babies in this county. We will be fine." In late September, on a cool evening that promised the coming of autumn, Lily's labor began. Yancey rode hard to fetch Martha, then paced the porch while Martha and 2 other women tended to his wife. It was the longest night of his life, every cry from inside the house making him want to break down the door to do something, anything to help her. But just before dawn, he heard a different sound, the lusty wail of a newborn baby. He froze, his heart pounding, waiting for someone to tell him what was happening. Finally, Martha opened the door, a tired smile on her face. "You have a son, Yancey, a big, healthy boy, and your wife is doing fine." He pushed past her into the house, going straight to the bed where Lily lay, pale and exhausted but smiling. In her arms was a tiny bundle, and as he approached, she pulled back the blanket to reveal their son. "He is perfect," Yancey breathed, touching one tiny fist with his finger. The baby's hand opened and then closed around his finger, gripping tight. "He is so small." "He is nearly 9 pounds, Martha said dryly. "Trust me, he is not small. Your wife is a trooper delivering a baby that size." "I am fine," Lily assured him, though she looked exhausted. "He is worth it." "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but never settled on anything definite. Yancey looked at his son, at this miracle they had created together, and one name came to mind. "What about Thomas, after my father?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Thomas Thornton, I love it." "Hello, Thomas. Welcome to the world." As Martha and the other women cleaned up and prepared to leave, Yancey sat carefully on the edge of the bed, his arm around Lily, both of them staring in wonder at their son. "I never knew I could feel like this," he said quietly. "Like my heart is going to burst right out of my chest." "I know," Lily whispered. "I look at him and I cannot believe we made him, that he is ours. We have a family now, a real family." "We have been a real family since the day we got married," Lily said, leaning her head against his shoulder. "But this is the beginning of something even bigger." Thomas was a good baby, healthy and strong. He had his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes, and he quickly became the center of their world. Yancey was a devoted father, taking over night duties so Lily could rest, talking to his son constantly, even though the baby could not understand him yet, carrying him around the ranch in a sling Martha had made, teaching him about the animals and the land that would one day be his. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier and more chaotic than before, but filled with a joy that neither of them had imagined possible. They worked together to keep the ranch running while caring for Thomas, and somehow they made it work. When Thomas was 6 months old, on a cold March afternoon, Lily looked up from where she was playing with the baby to find Yancey staring at her with an expression she could not quite read. "What?" she asked, smiling. "Do I have spit up on my dress again?" "No." He came to sit beside her on the floor, reaching out to touch her face. "I was just thinking about how you came into my life. You collapsed on my porch, half dead, and I carried you inside. I told myself I was just helping someone in need, that I would get you back on your feet and send you on your way. But you did not," Lily said softly. "I could not. From the first time you opened your eyes and looked at me, I knew I was in trouble. I told myself it was too fast, that I should slow down, be sensible. But I did not want to be sensible. I wanted you, and I was willing to do whatever it took to keep you. You said you refused to let me go. I did, and I never will. He leaned in and kissed her gently. I love you, Lily Thornton. I have loved you from almost the beginning, and I will love you until the day I die and beyond. Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks. I love you too, Yancey. You saved my life in more ways than one. You gave me a home, a family, a future. You gave me everything. You gave me just as much. More, maybe. You gave me purpose and joy and a reason to wake up happy every morning. They sat together on the floor, their son playing between them, and felt the weight of their gratitude for the circumstances that had brought them together. It had been less than 2 years since Lily had stumbled onto Yancey's porch, desperate and dying. Now she was a wife, a mother, a woman who knew her worth and her strength. As the years passed, their family grew. 2 years after Thomas was born, Lily gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah, with Yancey's dark eyes and Lily's gentle smile. 18 months after that, another daughter arrived whom they named Rose. 3 children filled the ranch house with noise and laughter, with chaos and joy. Yancey expanded the ranch, buying more land as he could afford it, building up his herd. Thomas grew into a serious boy who loved the ranch as much as his father did, following Yancey everywhere and soaking up everything he taught. Sarah was spirited and fearless, climbing things she should not and getting into trouble with a grin that made it impossible to stay mad at her. Rose was quiet and thoughtful, content to sit with her mother and learn cooking and sewing and the gentler arts. The ranch prospered. Yancey's hard work and Lily's careful management meant they were able to save money, to invest in improvements, to build a legacy for their children. They added onto the house, giving the children their own room, building a proper dining room and parlor. It was still modest by some standards, but it was theirs, built with their own hands and their own sweat. Lily became a respected member of the Dalhart community, known for her kindness and her strength. She helped other women when they struggled, shared food when times were hard, and served at the church alongside Martha Hayes, who had become a dear friend. Sometimes, late at night when everyone else was asleep, Lily would lie awake and think about the path her life had taken. She thought about Marcus and the darkness of that time. She thought about the desperate walk across Texas, certain she would die before finding safety. She thought about collapsing on a stranger's porch, too weak to take another step. And then she thought about Yancey, about the moment he had picked her up and carried her inside, refusing to let her slip away into death. That single act of compassion had changed everything. It had given her a second chance at life, at love, at happiness. She never forgot how close she had come to losing it all. That knowledge made her cherish every moment, every ordinary day that was actually extraordinary because she was living it with people she loved. By the time Thomas was 10, Sarah was 8, and Rose was 6, the ranch had grown to over 1,000 acres with a herd of 500 cattle. Yancey had hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work, young men who lived in a bunkhouse Yancey had built, and who ate their meals with the family in the big kitchen Lily presided over. The children thrived. Thomas was already talking about taking over the ranch someday, planning improvements and strategies with a mind for business that impressed his father. Sarah had announced she wanted to be a horse trainer and spent every spare moment in the stables. Rose loved school and books and talked about becoming a teacher. They are all so different, Lily marveled one evening as she and Yancey sat on the porch, watching the sunset. It had become their ritual, these quiet moments at the end of the day, just the two of them reconnecting after the chaos of family life. "They get that from you," Yancey said, reaching for her hand. You taught them they could be whoever they wanted to be. We taught them that, together. Together, he agreed, squeezing her hand. They sat in comfortable silence, a silence built on years of partnership and love, of weathering storms together and celebrating victories together. They had built something beautiful here, something that would outlast them. "Do you ever think about that day?" Yancey asked suddenly. "The day you showed up here, all the time," Lily admitted. "I was so scared, Yancey. I thought I was dying. I had decided that dying free was better than living the life those men wanted for me, but I was still scared. I was scared too when I saw you lying there. I thought I was going to watch you die, that I would not be able to save you. But you did save me." "We saved each other," Yancey corrected. "I was dying too in my own way, dying of loneliness and purposelessness. You gave me a reason to live again." Lily turned to look at him. This man who had been her salvation and her partner, her lover and her best friend. His hair was starting to gray at the temples now, and there were lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. But to her, he was as handsome as the day they married. "I would do it all again," she said. "Every hard step, every moment of fear if I knew it would lead me to you." "You will never have to," Yancey said fiercely, pulling her close. "You will never have to walk alone again, Lily. I am here and I am not going anywhere. I know. That is what makes everything worthwhile." As the sun finally slipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold, they sat together on the porch of their home, surrounded by the life they had built together. Inside, their children were playing, their laughter drifting out through the open windows. Around them, the ranch stretched out in all directions, a testament to hard work and determination. It was not a perfect life. There were still hard days, still challenges to face. But it was a good life, rich with love and purpose and connection. It was everything Lily had never dared to hope for when she collapsed on that porch all those years ago. The years continued to pass with the steady rhythm of ranch life. The children grew and changed, each following their own path while remaining rooted in the values their parents had instilled. Thomas indeed took over more and more of the ranch operations as he entered his teenage years, working alongside his father with a dedication that made Yancey's chest swell with pride. Sarah became an excellent horsewoman, with a gift for gentling even the wildest mustangs. Rose excelled in her studies and began helping teach the younger children at the Dalhart schoolhouse when she was only 14. By the time Lily was in her early 40s, she and Yancey had been married for nearly 20 years. 2 decades of partnership, of building a life together, of facing whatever came their way as a team. Their love had only deepened with time, maturing into something steady and unshakable. One evening, as they celebrated their 20th anniversary with a family dinner, surrounded by their now nearly grown children, Lily found herself overwhelmed with gratitude. She excused herself from the table and stepped out onto the porch, needing a moment to compose herself. Yancey followed her out as she knew he would. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," she assured him, wiping at her eyes. "Everything is so right it almost scares me. Do you ever worry that we are too happy, that something will come along and take it all away?" "Every single day," Yancey admitted, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "But then I remember that we have already survived the worst. We found each other when we both needed saving. Whatever comes, we will face it together." "Together," Lily repeated, leaning back against his solid warmth. "I like the sound of that." 20 years, Yancey mused. 20 years since I convinced that stubborn reverend to marry us before the whole town decided we were living in sin. Lily laughed. "You make it sound so romantic." "It was not romantic. It was practical. But everything after has been both." He turned her in his arms to face him. I love you more today than I did the day we married, Lily Thornton, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." She reached up to touch his face, this face she knew as well as her own. "I never knew love could be like this, growing instead of fading, getting stronger instead of weaker. That is because you had the wrong example before, but now you know. This is what love is supposed to be." They kissed as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, a kiss that held 20 years of history and a promise of more years to come. Inside, Thomas had started playing the guitar Yancey had bought him for his 16th birthday, and Sarah was singing along in her clear, sweet voice. Rose was cleaning up from dinner, humming to herself. "We should go back in," Lily said reluctantly. "In a minute." Yancey held her close, swaying slightly to the music drifting from inside. "Dance with me first." So they danced on the porch in the twilight, moving to the sound of their children's music, holding each other close. It was a perfect moment, one of thousands they had shared and thousands more they would create. As Thomas grew into manhood, he met and fell in love with a young woman from a neighboring ranch. Her name was Emma, and she was strong and kind, a perfect match for the serious young rancher. When Thomas asked for Yancey's blessing to propose, Yancey gave it gladly, seeing in his son the same certainty he had felt when he decided to marry Lily. The wedding was a grand affair, with people coming from all over the county to celebrate. Lily cried happy tears as she watched her son pledge his life to the woman he loved, remembering her own wedding day and how different it had been from her first marriage. This was how it should be, two people choosing each other freely, building a partnership based on love and respect. Thomas and Emma built a house on the eastern edge of the ranch property, and soon enough, they announced they were expecting a baby. Lily was going to be a grandmother. The news filled her with a bittersweet joy, thrilled at the prospect of grandbabies, but also aware of how quickly time had passed. "When did we get old enough to be grandparents?" she asked Yancey one night. "Speak for yourself," he teased. "I am still in my prime. You are 48 years old, and you are 45. We are not old, Lily, we are experienced," she laughed, snuggling closer to him. "I suppose you are right, and I am excited about this baby. I just cannot believe our little boy is having a baby of his own. That little boy is 22 years old and running half this ranch. He is a man now, a good man. We raised him right. We did not we?" Lily said with satisfaction. "All of them. They are good people." Sarah had indeed become a renowned horse trainer, people bringing their difficult horses from miles around for her to work with. She had no interest in marriage yet, too focused on her passion for horses, and Lily respected that. Rose had become the primary teacher at the Dalhart school and was being courted by a young lawyer who had recently moved to town. When Thomas and Emma's baby arrived, a healthy boy they named William, Lily held her grandson and felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. This tiny person carried her blood, her legacy. The line that had almost ended with her on that desperate walk across Texas was continuing, thriving. "Hello, William," she whispered to the sleeping infant. "Welcome to the family. You are so loved already." Yancey stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders, looking down at their grandson with wonder. "We are starting a dynasty," he joked. "We are," Lily agreed. "The Thornton family, ranchers of Dalhart, Texas. It has a nice ring to it." Over the next several years, the family continued to grow. Sarah eventually did marry, choosing a fellow horse trainer she met at a competition in Amarillo. They settled near the ranch and started their own breeding operation. Rose married her lawyer and they built a beautiful house in town, though they visited the ranch often. More grandchildren arrived, each one welcomed with joy and celebration. Yancey and Lily slowly stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, letting Thomas take full control while they enjoyed a well-earned rest. They spent their days working in Lily's garden, taking long rides across their land, and spoiling their grandchildren rotten. One summer evening, when Lily was in her early 60s, she and Yancey were sitting on the porch watching yet another sunset. It was their favorite time, this quiet hour when the work was done and the world was peaceful. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not walked to Dalhart that summer? Yancey asked. Lily considered the question. I try not to. That path led to either death or something worse than death. This path, the one I chose, led to everything good in my life. I would not trade a single day with you for anything. Even the hard days, especially the hard days, those are the ones that taught us we could weather anything together. Yancey reached for her hand, and she noticed how wrinkled both their hands had become, marked with age spots and the wear of hard work. But his grip was still strong, his touch still sent warmth through her. I have been thinking, he said slowly, about that day you showed up. I carried you inside and refused to let you go. Best decision I ever made. I thought you were going to send me on my way once I recovered, Lily said. I remember being terrified you would. I could not. I knew almost immediately I could not. You were mine to protect from that moment forward. I just had to convince you to stay. You did not have to try very hard, Lily admitted. I did not want to leave, I just did not want to be a burden. You were never a burden, you were a blessing. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. You still are, every single day. They sat in peaceful silence as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. Around them, the ranch was quiet. The animals settled for the night. The workers in their bunkhouse, their children and grandchildren in their own homes scattered across the property and in town. We built something good here, Lily said softly. Something that will last long after we are gone. We did. And it all started with you having the courage to keep walking even when you thought you could not take another step. You walked right to where you were supposed to be. To you. To us, Yancey corrected. To this family, this life, this love. As the stars began to appear, one by one in the vast Texas sky, Lily leaned her head on Yancey's shoulder and felt completely at peace. Her journey had been long and hard, marked by pain and fear. But it had led her to exactly where she belonged, to a love that had sustained her through decades, to a family that brought her joy beyond measure. She had collapsed on a stranger's porch, half dead and desperate. He had carried her inside and refused to let her go. That moment of compassion, of one human helping another in their darkest hour, had blossomed into a lifetime of love. It had created a legacy that would continue for generations. As Lily drifted off to sleep that night, curled against Yancey's familiar warmth, she smiled. She had been saved in every way a person could be saved. And in saving her, Yancey had saved himself. They had built a beautiful life together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of love at a time. And it had been worth every step of the journey that brought them together. The seasons continued their endless cycle, and Yancey and Lily grew older together, their love remaining constant even as their bodies aged. They celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 35th, surrounded by children and grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren. The ranch thrived under Thomas's management, expanding further and becoming one of the most successful operations in the Texas Panhandle. But more than the financial success, the Thornton family became known for their integrity, their kindness, and their willingness to help neighbors in need. Lily often told her grandchildren the story of how she and their grandfather had met, wanting them to understand that sometimes the hardest moments in life led to the greatest blessings. She spoke of courage and compassion, of taking chances on love, of building something lasting through dedication and partnership. "Your grandfather saved my life," she would say. "But more than that, he showed me what life could be, what love should be. That is his greatest gift to me." When Lily was 70 years old, she fell ill with pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. Despite the doctor's best efforts and Yancey's constant care, she grew weaker. On a quiet February morning, surrounded by her family, Lily closed her eyes for the last time. Yancey held her hand as she passed, whispering his love to her until the very end. "I refuse to let you go once," he said through his tears. "But I cannot keep you here any longer. Go in peace, my love. I will see you again." The entire town of Dalhart turned out for her funeral. Lily had touched countless lives during her years there, and people came to pay their respects to the woman who had arrived as a desperate stranger and become the heart of the community. Yancey grieved deeply but found comfort in his children and grandchildren, in the legacy he and Lily had built together. He continued living on the ranch, still taking his evening seat on the porch, though now he sat alone, talking to Lily as if she were still beside him. 2 years later, on a warm summer evening very much like the one when Lily had first arrived, Yancey quietly passed away in his sleep. His family found him the next morning, peaceful and still, seated in his chair on the porch facing the sunset. They buried him beside Lily under a large oak tree on a hill overlooking the ranch. The headstone was simple: Yancey Thornton, beloved husband, father, and friend. He refused to let her go. Beside it, Lily's stone read, Lily Thornton, beloved wife, mother, and friend. She found her way home. Their children and grandchildren continued the ranch, passing down the story of Yancey and Lily, of how a chance meeting born of desperation had created a love story that spanned decades. The porch where Lily had collapsed was preserved, and family members still gathered there on summer evenings, feeling the presence of the two people who had started it all. The Thornton Ranch stood as a testament to their love and their vision, a thriving operation that provided for generations of family members. But more than the physical legacy, Yancey and Lily left behind a legacy of values: compassion for those in need, courage in the face of hardship, and the understanding that love, real love, only grew stronger with time. Their great-grandchildren would sit on that same porch and look out over the land their ancestors had built, feeling connected to a love story that had become legend in their family. They told and retold the tale of the woman who collapsed from exhaustion and the man who carried her inside and refused to let her go, knowing that their own lives existed because of that one moment of compassion, that one choice to help a stranger in need. In the end, Yancey and Lily's story was not just about survival or rescue. It was about two broken people finding each other at exactly the right moment, choosing to build a life together despite uncertainty and fear, and creating something beautiful that would outlast them both. It was a story of hope, of second chances, of love that transformed ordinary moments into something extraordinary. And it was a story that would be told for generations, a reminder that sometimes the most important decision you can make is to carry someone inside and refuse to let them go, because you never know how that single act of kindness might change everything. The ranch still stands to this day, over a century later, still in the Thornton family, still operating under the same values Yancey and Lily established all those years ago. And on summer evenings, if you listen carefully, some say you can still hear the echo of their voices on the porch, still talking and laughing together, still in love after all these years. Their story became part of the fabric of Dalhart, Texas, a reminder of the Wild West days when people relied on each other for survival, when a stranger's kindness could mean the difference between life and death, and when love, once found, was treasured and nurtured into something that lasted forever. Yancey and Lily Thornton lived and loved and built a legacy that proved one simple truth: that the most important moments in life often come when we least expect them, that courage and compassion can change everything, and that love, real and true and lasting love, is worth walking 200 miles through the desert to find. And once found, it is worth holding on to with both hands and refusing to ever let go.